Good evening from Jerusalem. I'm Yalda Hakim. Donald Trump's day began with a furious expletive-laden rant directed at Israel and Iran. He accused both countries of breaching a ceasefire that he helped to broker. And to salvage his hopes for peace, he phoned the Israeli Prime Minister and ordered him to turn around IDF jets that were poised to strike Iran. Then, hours later, as he flew into Europe, Mr. Trump appeared to cast doubt on America's willingness to step in and help defend its allies if they ever came under attack. That suggestion more ominous today as the UK government warned the country must actively prepare for a potential war at home. In a moment, we'll be live at The Hague, where Keir Starmer and Donald Trump met NATO leaders this evening. But first, here's our international correspondent John Sparks on the fragile ceasefire.
The war was over, said the American president. A complete and total ceasefire was now in effect. But it didn't look that way in the Iranian capital.
We are hearing a lot of explosions across Tehran.
Israeli jets attacking multiple targets throughout the country, despite Donald Trump's declaration of peace. Israel, too, came under assault. The Iranians launching wave upon wave of ballistic missiles, a number slamming into these apartment blocks in the southern city of Beersheba. First responders pulled 5 bodies from the rubble. At least 20 were injured. And the American president, well, he was furious with everyone involved.
These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous.
His ceasefire was looking shaky, and his language was coarse.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
Still simmering, we see Donald Trump embark on the first leg of his trip to the NATO summit in The Hague, his diplomatic triumph seemingly slipping away. Later, on Air Force One, the president picked up the phone to the Israeli Prime Minister. And as a result, according to Sky sources, Benjamin Netanyahu stopped an ongoing operation with dozens of planes in the air. With Israeli jets returning to base, Trump was sounding more diplomatic, telling reporters he wasn't looking to replace the Iranian regime.
I'd like to see everything calm down as quickly as possible. Regime change takes chaos. And ideally, we don't want to see so much chaos, so we'll see how it does.
It's clear that all sides are looking for a way to de-escalate. One day after Iran fired missiles at a US base in the region, which followed this audacious assault by the Americans on the Iranian nuclear facility at Fordo. The Israeli Prime Minister has used the occasion to declare a historic victory. Iran's nuclear program has been ruined for generations, he said. While the Iranians say they're prepared to sit down and talk, on one condition.
Our priority, there is no doubt, that would be the diplomacy and negotiation. Condition two, that, subject to that all of the hostilities against, all of the aggressive activities against our countries and our people should be stopped.
What the f***?
After 12 days of war, this ceasefire has surprised many. But the underlying issues remain, as does the deep-rooted hatred. The language of diplomacy, however, has definitely changed. John Sparks, Sky News.
Well, in a moment, we'll speak to our security and defence editor, Deborah Haynes. But first, let's speak to our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who joins me now live from Washington. And Mark, big questions at the moment being asked about the BDA, the Battle Damage Assessment. I just spoke to General Petraeus, who said, frankly, it's just too early to tell, that they don't have boots on the ground to be able to make a proper assessment. And this would have to look at things, on a wider scale. But that hasn't stopped those who believe, the sort of destruction of the nuclear program wasn't achieved, and those who continue to push back to say it has been destroyed.
Yeah, because of course, if it hasn't been destroyed, then that sort of raises the question: what was the point of this 12-day war? General Petraeus should know. I mean, he is about as senior as they get. He's also no fan of Donald Trump, so you might think he would be, open to criticising him, but he didn't. It was a striking interview, and he did say that time is of the essence, and it will take time. But against that, there is, conversations I've had over the course of the past few days with sources who've said, look, it's very unlikely to completely obliterate, to use Trump's word, Iran's nuclear capabilities. It will set it back maybe weeks, maybe months. And in fact, some officials have openly said that despite Trump's obliteration comments. And into that comes a new row. And it is, leaked reporting from to CNN and to the New York Times suggesting, as you say, that the strikes last weekend did not destroy the core components of the country's nuclear program and likely set the nuclear program only back by maybe months, which is certainly doesn't align with Trump's suggestion that they have been obliterated. The key question is, did the Iranians manage to move some of the centrifuges? Did they have a secret site? There is certainly some evidence to suggest there is a secret site elsewhere that may not have been destroyed. And what about the highly enriched uranium? Did they move that? There were trucks seen at Fordo in the day before the bombing took place. So all of these questions are unanswered. Intelligence will try to answer them. But of course, it's going to be even harder now to operate inside Iran. And the IAEA, the independent body that can ascertain what's going on to a great extent, not always completely, they too will find their work a lot harder there. The Defense Secretary has responded to these leaks, and he has released a statement. He says, based on everything we have seen, and I've seen it all, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. Our massive bombs hit exactly the right spot at each target and worked perfectly. The impact of those bombs is buried under a mountain of rubble in Iran. So anyone who says the bombs were not devastating is trying to undermine the president and the successful mission. It has, Yalda, been a bewildering day, not just for us, but I can tell you, having spoken to numerous diplomats here in Washington who've been trying to work out what's going on, trying to read the room on behalf of their own governments, they too are bewildered by the way things have unfolded here. In the simplest terms, it is a win for Donald Trump and a display of his strength that he was able to get both sides to agree to a ceasefire, and he did it over social media. That is remarkable, but we need to take a step back. We need to look at the context, the wider picture. It is much, much more complicated. He, I think, has gone for a quick fix.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. Let's go straight to Deborah, who is standing by. And Deborah, you're at that NATO summit. Donald Trump is there as well. But on his way there, alongside a number of other bombshells, he talked about, well, he was asked about Article 5 and this notion that if a NATO ally was attacked, that the United States would stand by them. Well, he kind of cast doubt on that based on the statements he made on Air Force One.
He did, and that would have gone down very badly with the allies here. They've been bending over backwards to set the stage for what is going to be, of course, the Donald Trump show when the summit kicks off for real tomorrow. Tonight, the leaders were meeting for a social dinner, it's called, hosted by the royal family here in the Netherlands. To be a fly on the wall inside the room as they were eating and talking and trying to woo Donald Trump and get him back on side. The allies are going to be increasing their defence spending, again, to try to attract Donald Trump. But over a period of 10 years, will he be impressed by that? He's certainly not impressed by Spain, which has yet to say it's going to even meet that target. And as you can see from my report, there's lots of potential for serious friction.
NATO summits are meant to be a show of unity and strength. But before he'd even arrived, the most powerful ally of them all dropped a verbal bombshell from his plane.
Are you still committed to Article 5 of NATO?
It depends on your definition. There's numerous definitions of Article 5, you know that, right? But I'm committed to being their friends. I've become friends with many of those leaders, and I'm committed to helping them.
Any suggestion the US would not defend a NATO member undermines the Article 5 founding principle of the alliance, that an attack on one is an attack on all. It's a nightmare scenario that allies here are trying to avoid.
Donald Trump is the star attraction at this gathering of leaders in The Hague. His allies are desperate to keep him sweet. It's a key reason why they'll agree to a new spending goal of 5% of GDP for defence and national resilience. The president seems to like the pandering, even posting the gushing content of a presumably private text from the head of NATO. Mark Rutte wrote, "Donald, you have driven us to a really, really important moment for America and Europe and the world. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done. Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win." Also needing a win, but increasingly sidelined by events, is Ukraine's president. Volodymyr Zelensky has the ear of European allies, but it's Donald Trump who he really needs on side to end Russia's war in his country. While the US president sees himself as the world's peacemaker, his attempts to broker an end to the fighting in Ukraine have so far backfired. With such unpredictability growing, the UK has published a new national security strategy that warns the homeland could face the same kind of threats seen in Ukraine. Endorsed by the Prime Minister, it urges greater national resilience.
We are facing daily challenges on the home front, so whether that's cyber attacks, which are very, very frequent and very, very serious, whether that is a focus on energy security. We've seen from the Ukraine war that energy is weaponized by our adversaries.
Countering these risks is a challenge for the whole of the alliance. It won't be cheap, and it will be a lot harder without Washington. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, The Hague.
And just a reminder, an armed attack on the UK is exactly the scenario that's explored in a new podcast series by Sky News and Tortoise Media. All 5 episodes are now available. Scan the QR code on your screen to listen wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll be back later in the programme with more on how missile strikes have affected daily life in Israel and Iran's nuclear programme. But for now, Gillian, back to you in London.
Yalda, thank you. Well, you saw Ukraine's president in Deborah's report there. Well, in London yesterday, he issued a stark warning about the ineffectiveness of sanctions against Russia. Speaking exclusively to my colleague Mark Austin, Volodymyr Zelensky said some UK companies are still allowing dual-use components used in the production of drones and missiles to get into Russian hands.
Including the UK. Not too much, but including the UK. I gave the Prime Minister examples, but it's about...
For weapon systems.
Yeah. It's not weapon systems, it's components. Of course, UK companies never delivered a weapon to Russia. Of course not. But there are some components from some companies. It's from China, Taiwan, mostly China, Taiwan, but also Europe.
Well, our economics and data editor, Ed Conway, has been taking a look at President Zelensky's claims.
So is President Zelensky right that there are UK goods, components going to help Vladimir Putin in his war effort? Well, we've been tracking this for quite some time, looking at the flow of goods around from the UK to elsewhere. And we did notice a pattern. We've been looking at this for quite some time. It's just showing you the goods that are sanctioned now and how many of them are going into Russia and how many of them are going to Russian neighbours. UK goods, black line Russia. Just look at what happened after the invasion of Ukraine. That line goes down basically to zero. So that, if you just look at that, it looks like sanctions are working. But now look at these same goods, dual-use goods as they're known, stuff that can be used in weaponry, and look at them, the amount of them going to Russian neighbours. So countries neighbouring Russia, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, other countries like that. And you see they go up. They go up quite sharply. And we were wondering, actually, in recent months, has that come down? Has that line gone down towards zero in terms of sanctioned goods going to Russian neighbours? Well, the short answer is no. In fact, it's gone up. It's up by 111% over this period compared with the pre-invasion period. And we kind of know what happens next because we went out to investigate this. So the broad picture is this. So these goods were previously going towards Russia, and now, instead of going to Russia, they're going to other places. They're going to places like Armenia, Kyrgyzstan. They're going to places like Georgia. They're going to places like Uzbekistan and other areas on the neighbouring, in the kind of Caucasus and all this, also in Central Asia. And then, generally speaking, you know, the data gets a bit more shaky at that point. But what we suspect is they get shuffled around here. So maybe to Azerbaijan, maybe to Georgia, maybe to other countries as well. We know some of them go down to Armenia. And then we know that some of them end up going over the border from Georgia and also from other points there. And we know that because we've tracked it. We went out to the border between Georgia and Russia, and what we saw there, very strikingly, was lots of European cars which are also sanctioned, waiting to go across the border. And the reason why we're looking at the cars is they're harder to hide, but there were also all these trucks lined up. You can see a few of them there. We just don't know what's inside them, but we do know that a lot of sanctioned goods are ending up seemingly on the borderlands with Russia, and then we know they end up within those battlefields in terms of those weapons. It's worth just saying as well, it's not just the neighbouring countries to Russia. Also, look at the UAE, look at Turkey, and look at the same thing. So sanctioned items going to these countries, that's the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What happens to these lines afterwards? They go up really quite sharply. And what we do know as well is a lot more goods going from these countries towards Russia. And that's what's happening with these sanctions. They are very leaky indeed. And when we're talking about these sanctioned items, what does that mean? Well, let's just break down the biggest proportion of these goods. What are they? It's aircraft parts, it's communications equipment, it's measurement equipment, data processing units, electrical transformers, navigation equipment. It's the kind of stuff that goes into drones, into weaponry, and it's the kind of stuff that we know ends up killing Ukrainian citizens.
Ed Conway there. The government is facing an unprecedented rebellion over its welfare reforms, which are intended to cut the welfare bill and help disabled people into work. More than 100 MPs have signed an amendment calling for the proposed cuts to personal independence payment and universal credit to be stopped. So will the government give in? Here's Tamara Cohen.
Getting disabled people into work is what the government says is the aim of their controversial welfare changes.
Right, let's cut up John's pie.
At this community cafe in Oldham, many of Anna's staff are volunteers who rely on these benefits.
I'm sure it'll affect them quite a lot. We got them coming to work here, so they have to pay for their bus fares, etc. If there's any benefit cuts, it'll impact a lot of people, definitely.
The Prime Minister, at a NATO summit as the turmoil deepened, said he would press ahead.
We've got to get on and make that reform because the options are leave the system as it is, trapping people and not helping them. That's not a Labour option. The Labour option is to reform it and make it fit for the future. So we're going to press ahead with these reforms.
But well over 100 Labour MPs have signed an amendment opposing the bill. They said it had not been subject to consultation with disabled people or their carers, and added that the government's own assessment estimates that 250,000 people will be plunged into poverty as a result of these changes.
The scale of this rebellion is unprecedented. It's big enough to defeat the government if other parties also vote against the changes. But ministers insist the welfare bill is becoming unsustainable. They now have a week to decide if they'll make concessions. Will the Conservatives help Keir Starmer out by voting for these welfare changes?
I'm just making it very clear to Keir Starmer that if he will make commitments at the dispatch box to meet our conditions, which are to reduce the welfare budget, to get people into work and not have tax rises, then we can support his bill.
This Labour MP is urging the Prime Minister to rethink.
I mean, that's not a very good look for any government, I don't think, to rely on the opposition to get your policy programme through. If you can't convince your own members to vote for it, then I think you're in a serious place.
We asked people in Oldham what the government should do.
There's other places they could get the money from. They don't need to take it off the people that are disabled and trying to get along with life.
Pre-COVID, there's 2/3 more people claiming benefits on personal PIPs than there was before then. So what's changed between then and now?
Ordinary people just want the money to go to people that deserve it. It's as simple as that.
a looming decision on whether to U-turn or forge ahead. Either choice could come at a high political price. Tamara Cohen, Sky News.
A self-styled rich kid of Instagram has pleaded guilty to fraud after conning people out of almost £200,000 in a luxury handbag scam. 26-year-old Jack Watkin used a fake glamorous lifestyle, describing himself as the Kardashian of Cheshire to gain his victims' trust. Katerina Vitozzi reports.
This is Jack Watkin, the self-proclaimed rich kid of Instagram in 2016.
People think because we've got the cars, the clothes, all the things around us, the house, they say we're like the British Kardashians.
Draped in luxury goods, Watkin bragged about his life on social media and, age 17, in this reality TV show.
The teenager regularly dines at the most exclusive restaurants.
But today, nearly 10 years later, Watkin pleaded guilty to defrauding strangers, friends, even his dad, out of hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Foreseeable future, you're going to be in our company for a good 6 hours. So that's where we're at the moment. Mr. Watkin himself is from a wealthy background. There is no denying that. Unfortunately, there comes an age where you are an adult and you have to go out to work and you have to fund that lifestyle. Unfortunately, the funding he may have had disappeared, and as a result of that, the only way he could sustain the lifestyle he'd been accustomed to was to commit crime.
Watkin persuaded people to invest money with him to buy and sell luxury Hermès handbags. Hermès is a luxury brand and it only sells handbags to a select few people, which Jack Watkin claimed he was. And because of this exclusivity, these bags often resale far more than their original price. But the people that gave Watkin money saw neither their investment, any profit, or a handbag. Christine Colbert was one of his victims, losing £43,000.
Jack was an extremely believable person. His knowledge and depth of knowledge of the luxury goods industry was quite staggering, to be perfectly honest, especially considering his age as well. So I was very much convinced that his lifestyle, which we could see on social media, was true. And to be fair, he was living that lifestyle. It just happened to be on everybody else's money.
That included spending £100,000 at the Dorchester Hotel in London, a spending spree that only ended when Christine Colbert and another victim found each other and called the police. Jack Watkin pleaded guilty to 6 counts of fraud. He'll be sentenced in September. Katerina Vitozzi, Sky News in Chester.
7 people have been charged following a protest in support of Palestine action. The charges include a racially aggravated public order offence, assaulting an emergency worker and breaking the Public Order Act. Yesterday's protest was held in response to the Home Secretary announcing Palestine action would be banned under anti-terror laws after activists broke into the RAF Brize Norton base and vandalised 2 planes.
Welcome back to Jerusalem. A fragile ceasefire between Israel and Iran appears to be holding tonight. And after those reports that Iran's nuclear program may only have been set back by a few months, the Pentagon has insisted their bunker-busting bombs obliterated Iran's capacity to build a nuclear weapon. Our science and technology editor Tom Clark has been assessing Iran's uranium supply and the sites that remain.
US and Israeli strikes on Iran were some of the most sophisticated bombing campaigns in history, targeting 7 key facilities associated with Iran's nuclear program. But they weren't comprehensive. We've identified at least 10 nuclear sites that remain. So why? Some may have been spared because they weren't an imminent threat. Take the underground Kolan Gazlar facility. It's right next to the Natanz nuclear complex, and much deeper than even the Fordo site bombed at the weekend. But this satellite image suggests it was untouched, possibly because it still appears to be under construction. Other sites, though, may have been spared to avoid a widespread nuclear disaster. Nearly all the sites hit were involved with uranium enrichment. That involves centrifuges like these, filled with uranium hexafluoride gas. Now, that's extremely toxic, potentially fatal to anyone standing nearby if it leaked. But the radiation risk is pretty low. Uranium is heavy. Even if hoisted into the air by a bomb, it quickly falls to the ground. But nuclear reactors like this one at Arak are a very different story. When they're running, they contain a complex soup of radioactive elements, many of which are lightweight and highly radioactive.
You've got volatile fission products in the fuel itself, and they're by definition they're volatile. So if they escape, then they're going to get into the atmosphere. And if you've got a force like in the case of Chernobyl, where you had a fire which was elevating the volatiles, then they get into the atmosphere and then get distributed by normal sort of atmospheric dispersion.
This suggests bombing raids may have deliberately avoided reactors. Take Isfahan. Israel, then America, destroyed multiple buildings at the site linked to uranium enrichment, but neither hit this building. And guess what? It houses a small research reactor, which, if blown up, would cause serious contamination. The same goes for the Bushehr nuclear power plant here in the south of Iran and the Tehran research reactor up there. But reactors are relevant to weaponization. While running, they make plutonium as a byproduct, perfect for nuclear bombs, and do it much quicker than it takes to enrich uranium, which could explain this. On June the 19th, Israel bombed the Arak nuclear reactor, capable of making 9 kilograms of plutonium a year, perhaps because it could do so only because it was being rebuilt and contained no fuel and therefore no fallout risk. All this suggests the recent strikes were a compromise. While America and Israel may want to wipe out Iran's nuclear ambitions, the threat of a radioactive disaster and the international outcry that would create tied their hands.
Tom Clark reporting there. Well, here in Israel, 4 people were killed when a residential block in the southern city of Beersheba was directly struck by an Iranian missile. Cordelia Lynch has been speaking to families there, some who believe Israel should continue attacking Tehran.
This is certainly not a victory lap for anyone. 3 nations, 1 carefully calibrated truce, now trying to rebuild what they managed to break so quickly. This is Beersheba in southern Israel, struck by an Iranian missile just an hour before the ceasefire set in, killing 4 people. Galit's mother was trapped in her apartment. She was sleeping when it struck. She heard the siren, her daughter tells me, and went to the safe room. She didn't even manage to close the door when she heard an enormous boom. She thought the missile had fallen on her home. Despite the threat, some here aren't ready for the war to end.
I think we need to go and finish what we start. And that's it.
You don't want
it
to stop?
No stop. It needs to continue.
Do you think Netanyahu has stopped too early?
Yes, it stopped too early.
Oren's 3 sons have been staying in the safe room ever since this conflict began. They went to bed, hoping for peace, and woke to discord and destruction.
It's like a bad dream, I think. I hope for the kids that they're going to be, from the soul, it's going to be okay, because it's not easy to see our home, our lovely home like this.
How do you feel about this ceasefire? Does it look like a ceasefire to you?
No, of course not.
Do you think Israel should continue to fight?
I think that we have not other options.
Donald Trump may have thought he played a master hand, writing his name into the history books as an architect of peace. But his 12-day war is now, unfortunately, on day 13. This ceasefire appears more than just fragile, with a war of words erupting almost immediately after it came into effect. It looked dead on arrival. The test is just how willing both sides are to revive it. Their face-saving exercise collapsed with dizzying speed, but it's not in tatters. Trump may be looking for a forever peace in a land of forever war. Israel and Iran need something more immediate. Another moment to both claim they have won. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Beersheba, Israel.
Well, this fragile truce does hold for now, and the big question is, will it continue to hold, and if so, for how long before things erupt between these two countries yet again? We will continue to monitor all the developments here from the ground. But for me and the team, good night, and back to you, Gillian, in the studio.
Yalda, thank you. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by journalist and commentator Ali Miraj and journalist and broadcaster Jenny Kleeman. Amongst the stories, we'll be discussing this on the front of the Metro. Its headline, Trump drops F-bomb. We'll be right back. Do stay with us.